Hey there, fourth grade. It's Mr. Remedies with today's reading mini lesson, continuing our focus on nonfiction text and how the author organizes those nonfiction texts. All right. Today's lesson, you see it on your screen. We're talking about how nonfiction authors organize their information by comparing and contrasting. Okay. You know what's next. Boom. Not a secret. No spoilers are ahead. No surprises for you. We're moving on to our learning goal and success criteria, followed by some vocabulary, and then we're going to look at a quick example exactly identifying how this is all done. All right, so let's move on over to those learning goals and success criteria right now. Our learning goal is that we are learning to notice when an author organizes information using a compare and contrast structure. Okay, along the way, we want you to make sure that you're tracking your success. We have some I can statements to help you do that. There are success criteria. You love them. They're there to help us along the way. Today, hopefully you can say, I can define compare. Very important today. I can define contrast. And I can recognize common traits of compare and contrast structure. Okay? If you hit those along the way, you know what? We'll be some pretty successful folks out there. All right, let's move on to that all-important vocabulary today. Today, boom, on your screen, we got 2 vocabulary words for you today. It is incredibly important that you understand what the word compare means. Compare means to examine 2 or more objects, ideas, things, to find similarities. So when we compare 2 things, we're looking for the ways in which they are similar. We're looking for similarities. Okay. The BFF of compare is contrast. Contrast sounds very similar. Contrast means to examine 2 or more objects, ideas, things, places, what have you, to find the differences between the 2. Okay. And I know in the past, perhaps the adults in your life or your teachers have used compare and contrast to mean the same thing, but there is a technical difference. And now, boom, you know that difference. You rock. All right, so once again, when I say compare, I'm looking at examining 2 objects and finding how they're similar, how they're alike. And when I say contrast, we're talking about looking at 2 objects or more, 2 objects, and we are seeing how they are different. All right, with that out of the way, let's look at an example. All right, our example today of nonfiction text in a compare and contrast structure comes from Face to Face with Whales. And we were able to look at this a little while ago in our text features for nonfiction text last week. So this should be familiar to you, okay? But I want to draw your attention specifically to pages 18, 19, and 21. So let's take a look at those right now. In the book, page 18 starts out telling us that there are 2 main types of whales, and each has a different way to catch food. One type of whale does not have teeth. Instead, they have something called baleen attached to the roofs of their mouths. Baleen is made of the same substance as our fingernails. It hangs in fringed plates, kind of like a bristly mustache inside their mouths. This type of whale will eat by taking in a big gulp of small animals along with a lot of seawater, then partly closing its mouth and squeezing the water out while trapping the prey inside. Some baleen whales have pleats on their throats. They can expand to take in tons of prey and seawater. Blue, fin, mink, sei, brides, and humpback whales are all baleen whales. Right whales and bowheads are also baleen whales. They eat everything from small fish to krill, which are shrimp-like animals that are found in large quantities in the ocean. Gray whales are also baleen whales. And wrapping up, these whales often feed along the muddy ocean bottom, sucking up small animals along with a lot of mud, sand, and water. Then they squeeze out most of the muddy water. They must not mind a little dirt in their food, which, dirt don't hurt, right? The other kind of whale has teeth instead of baleen. It usually hunts larger prey such as fish or squid. Toothed whales include the sperm whale, beluga, and narwhal. Oh, I didn't know narwhal was a kind of whale, but here we go. Some of the smaller and less known whales, like the beaked whales and pygmy sperm whales, are also toothed whales. To help them catch food, these whales echolocate, which means they send out sounds that bounce off objects in their environment. They can read the echoes coming back to get a very complete picture of what is around them in the ocean, even when they can't see because it is so dark down there. Very interesting text. Bam. I'm glad I'm bringing this lesson to you. I didn't know a lot about that. Echolocate. So my question now is, guys, is what did you notice about this text specifically from these pages? Did you guys notice that the author told the reader at the beginning of the passage there were two types of whales? It was clearly stated, hey guys, there are two objects I'm about to talk about. Right? He said the author told us many details about the first type of whale, which was the baleen whale. And gave us tons of information about just that type of whale. Then the author clearly states, because they use the phrase, the other type of whale is a toothed whale. They were very specific and they were very clear that that we were learning about two types of whales and that they had finished talking about the first type and now we're moving on to the second one. The author told us many details about the second type of whale, and they kept that information very similar in comparison to the baleen whales, to the first type of whales. Right? The author talked about how the baleen whales eat, how their mouths were structured, and how they use their mouths and throat. And then the author told us there was another type of whale and then shared the same type of information about toothed whales, about how they eat, how their mouth was structured, and where they go to actually catch their food. So this is a wonderful, wonderful example of compare and contrast structure. So much so that we can move on and even create a little chart of our own to actually compare and contrast the two types of whales. So the first whale type we talked about was the baleen whales. They have something called baleen, which are those that material that are not quite like teeth. Remember, it's kind of like shaped like a frilly mustache, but it's made out of the same thing as our fingertips. They eat small animals and they feed along the ocean bottom. Right? Then the author tells us about toothed whales, which they have teeth, they hunt large prey, and they can echolocate. They can send out a signal that bounces off objects and gives them a clear vision, quote unquote, of where objects are so they can catch them and eat them. But then we can compare and know that both whales breathe air, because all whales do. They feed their milk to their young. We find that in another part of the text. They are mammals, and all mammals feed milk to their young. And we know that whales live in the ocean, unless I got a couple of particular kiddos out there who are like, no, Mr. Remedies, that some of them live in SeaWorld. We know that, but the vast majority of them live in the ocean. Boom, gotcha, got him, coach. Right? So because the author has done a great job of writing in a compare and contrast structure, we can easily create one of these little handy dandy little comparison charts, or something like a Venn diagram, which is the interlocking circles we've seen throughout our time in school. And we can really process the information and really get a good understanding of what the author is trying to share with us. What an awesome example of compare and contrast. Good job, face-to-face whales. Okay, let's move on. Boom, review time. Yeah. That was a pretty slick transition, Mr. Remedies. Boom, you know it. So let's review. Nonfiction is organized in many different ways, and one of those ways, it's often organized in a compare and contrast structure. Remember, vocabulary word number one, compare means to examine two or more things, and find similarities. Contrast is similar, but it means to examine two or more things and find differences between them. Okay? And it looks like it cut off. But compare and contrast structure often includes phrases like there are blank types of, the first type is, and then details about the first type, the second type is, and then details about the second type, or third or fourth, or however many that the author is comparing and contrasting. Okay? When authors use compare and contrast structure, it makes information a little bit easier to process, and it makes it a little bit easier to understand exactly what the author's message is. All right, that's all the time we have for today. As always, I've been Mr. Remedies, coming to you from Fairview Miss Jewel, across Copper's Cove. All my fourth graders, you've been absolutely amazing, and we will see you next time. Bye for now, guys. Whoa. Have a good day.